Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing Luigi's Mansion for the 3DS. Now, I didn't review the original version that came out on the GameCube because the last time I played it, I was a teenager. And you know what they say, sometimes our childhood memories aren't nearly up to snuff with how the game really is. But at the time, I thought that it was an incredible showcase for the GameCube's power. I was like, whoa, this is what a Mario game can look like? I especially loved the lighting. Like, Luigi's flashlight truly felt like it was cutting through the dark. And the game was so technically advanced that when Nintendo was in the prototype for the game, they actually wanted to implement a 3D panel on the GameCube so that it could display stereoscopic 3D way back in 2001. Yeah, so when this remake was announced, it was meant to play Luigi's Mansion as it was originally meant to be played. Well, is that truly the case? Yes and no. So first off, before I get into the new features part, I just want to say that if you just get the base game, which is approximately $40, you're pretty much getting a straight port of the GameCube original. The graphics have been slightly updated. The controls now allow for you to use the right stick on the 3DS to control Luigi's flashlight and vacuum. There's motion controls as well, which work surprisingly well, especially when you're trying to capture boos. There's also a map on the bottom screen, which is both a hindrance and a help, depending on if you can read what the colors do. And there's also a boss rush mode, if you actually like the bosses in that game. I never did, except the first one. That was kind of cool. Now, if you want to play the game in a truly remade experience, then you're going to have to shell over a couple of dollars. So you might have been seeing a green Luigi following Luigi around. Yes, this game supports a full-on co-op mode. That's very different from the scare scraper in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. If two people have a copy of the game, then the second player plays as Gooigi, which was apparently designed from Professor Egad of the future. Now, I haven't actually tested this because I can't think of anyone else that would want to play it with me. But from what I heard, Gooigi can revive as many times as he wants, so that makes the experience slightly less frustrating. If you only have one 3DS, or one cartridge but two 3DSs, then you can do the boss rush together. Which is okay, but like I said, who literally likes the bosses in this game? I can't think of anyone that actually said, whoa, yeah, dude, the bosses in this game were totally rad. So, the game also supports amiibos, and this is where this remake has the definition of you get as much as you pay for it. So there are 4 amiibos that Luigi's Mansion for the 3DS supports. If you scan pretty much any Mario amiibo, you get the ability to turn any poison mushroom into a super mushroom, which refills 30 health instead of temporarily shrinking you and reducing your health. Then the Luigi amiibo gives you a chance to revive if you die by making Polterpup appear, and even playing a little bit of music from Dark Moon, as well as making sneaky spirits have flashing furniture when you're about to get jump scared. The Boo amiibo lets you show the location of up to 3 boos that might have escaped your capture on the map, instead of wandering all over the mansion to find them. As in the original game, sometimes they'd even go into rooms that you hadn't found the key for yet, and that got pretty frustrating. Finally, the Toad amiibo allows you to refill your health when you talk to a toad, which otherwise are used to save your progress. Now, these all sound really great, but the problem is, why weren't they included in the base game? Why is Nintendo requiring people to spend extra money for features that should have been included already? Now, I could see people saying, well, Paul, maybe I want to play the game the original way. And that's cool, but why do you need to spend extra money for features that don't necessarily add anything to the game? They just make it more accessible. If anything, that should have been something in the options menu, because one option that you get without amiibo is that you can choose to charge up Luigi's flashlight like he did in Dark Moon, or you can just point the flashlight at an enemy like you did in the original. Both options work okay, although I found myself switching off between the two as I progressed. In addition to that, if you own the original 3DS, then you're going to have to get a Circle Pad Pro just to be able to move the camera properly. Otherwise, you're going to have to go into your vacuum, use the motion controls to move the vacuum up and down, and then that in turn will adjust your flashlight. Unless the game automatically detects that you're on a 3DS. Because I played it on the new 3DS, and most of the time the right stick worked just fine, although for some odd reason it had trouble going down. Maybe that's just my system. But it was super frustrating to have to go into the vacuum and then go onto my flashlight. The game does support stereoscopic 3D, thankfully. For a 3DS title in 2018, that's kind of a rarity. And it's okay. I mean, it's greatly appreciated that Nintendo actually acknowledges that this is a 3DS game and that the original game was supposed to have 3D. But it doesn't really add much to the immersive experience. In fact, there's even a puzzle late in the game that requires you to shoot at something far away, and I actually found that it was easier to complete the puzzle with the 3D off. So it sort of seems like a missed opportunity, except for maybe the cutscenes, which add a slight bit of depth to the experience. Now, Luigi's Mansion as a base game was cool, but it definitely had its moments that made it slightly frustrating. For example, once Luigi releases Booze, then you get an indicator on top of your Game Boy Horror, which is basically Luigi's cell phone in that game. And you have to capture them after you've completed the objectives in a dark room. Now, at first, the booze can be sucked up pretty easily into your vacuum, but eventually they have upwards of 200 to 300 health. And sometimes it's hard to maneuver your vacuum to get them all before they wander through a wall. Then you have to go back and forth between two rooms dozens of times, including sometimes waiting to get a key. Now, if you don't have the Boo amiibo, which mind you is pretty darn hard to find, I had to get it from Japan, just to put that into perspective, then you're going to have to face the same problem as in the original game, and that's, arg, where the heck did they go? And in the original, you didn't have a map on the bottom screen, so you had to keep pausing and unpausing the game to look at what rooms were available, and since you couldn't see where the Boo went, you had to just say, okay, I think this is the room it went into. And there was a lot of guesswork. In addition to that, you couldn't save anywhere you wanted. You could save after you found a Boo, completed an area, of which there are only a whopping 4, or found a Toad. But that's not exactly always consistent. As the game progresses, there become fewer and fewer Toads to save your game with. And even though, yeah, there are 50 Boos that you can find, what if you found all 50 Boos and you still want to save? Well, then it's back to backtracking. And even though this game has a lot of little secrets that you can find, oftentimes you'll probably have to either find a guide or discover them by accident in order to fully appreciate the game without being overly frustrated. For example, there are trick doors in the mansion that'll actually cause Luigi to be smacked against the wall instead of going through it, which might be amusing at first, but eventually you're just like, why can't the map point out these fake doors? Turns out that you have to rattle them with your vacuum, and if the door shakes on its hinges, it's real, otherwise it's fake. But would you have figured that out by simple observation? That's kind of a non-intuitive thing to do. In addition to that, Luigi can scan with the Game Boy Horror, which basically allows you to look around in a first-person view, and if you scan a ghost's heart, then you can get a little hint as to its weakness, as well as Luigi giving little commentary on different things in the mansion, which is quite a rarity in a Mario game. Usually it's the partner that does the talking. But perhaps because this is Luigi instead of Mario, they're able to sort of break that trend. I also really hated the fact that there were a couple of RNG encounters. Not too many, but a couple. Like, there were these pair of ghosts that require you to play hide and seek, and their positions in the boxes are entirely random. The only way you're able to find out for sure is by rattling their boxes with the vacuum again. It sort of seems like the game expects you to use the vacuum when you might not necessarily think that it's the most logical thing to do. So, as you can tell, Luigi's Mansion is kind of rough around the edges, and the only way to experience the game in a slightly more refined version is to either buy a Circle Pad Pro if you don't have a 3DS or 2DS XL, or buy the amiibos to get some functionality that should have been included in the main game. While there is a 2-player mode, you have to have 2 versions of the game, which, as of the time of this recording, is probably going to cost you $40 if you need 2 copies, and then another 200 some odd dollars if your friend doesn't already have a 3DS, which I guess is kind of expected, but still, it kind of stinks that the local download play is reserved to only the boss rush, which again, nobody cares about. There's also multiple endings you can get, but all they really do is just change the house that Luigi gets at the end of the game. And it feels so random how you get the houses. Like, you have to get a certain amount of gold, which finding the gold often involves shaking every piece of furniture in the mansion and then sucking them up with the vacuum before they disappear. But you also lose gold if you get hit by the ghosts, and you have to quickly suck it up before it disappears. And honestly, that feels like kind of a wasted opportunity. Like, how do you even know how much gold you need for the true ending in the first place? I had no idea that the amount of gold I got would get me an E rank, because the game didn't tell me you need this much more. It just said, oh, okay, you stink, at the very end of the game. Now, there is a New Game Plus, but when I tried to play it on the original GameCube, I couldn't find much differences. I didn't feel like going back and replaying the game all over again, so I'm just going to say from what I heard, it's basically the same game, but slightly harder. As if this game wasn't hard enough already. I mean, yeah, it is fairly easy, but it does have its frustrating moments. Nevertheless, Luigi's Mansion does deserve praise for the presentation. Luigi is portrayed as very cowardly, maybe not as over-the-top as he was in Dark Moon, but it does do a good job of differentiating him from his brother Mario. In addition to that, the lighting is absolutely wonderful, and they even give you a test at the beginning of the game to make sure that the game is as immersive as possible. There's constantly thunder cracking outside the mansion. Luigi actually hums along to the music. He can do it either whistling if he's in a light room, or if it's in a dark room, he kind of hums along. And Charles Martinet does a wonderful job of calling out Mario's name in different fashions depending on how far Luigi is in the mansion, from a simple Mario to a Mario if he's really, really scared. So, Luigi's Mansion may sound and play okay, but it doesn't really do much to shake up the formula for people that didn't like the original game. Sure, it may have a map, and sure, amiibos may help the game more manageable, but people that didn't like the original are probably just going to want to skip this. For fans that loved the original, you're pretty much getting the same experience as on the GameCube, just on the go. So, I think this game is worth a rent. I definitely wouldn't recommend buying it at full price unless you either lost the GameCube version or didn't get it at all. But even then, it's still a good game, but not a terrific one. It's just okay, strictly speaking. Now, I wouldn't have said that years ago, but playing it again made me realize they definitely could have done better, but they definitely could have done a lot worse. So with that in mind, definitely get it for either a lower price or rent it from GameFly. But buying it full price like I did, only if you're an absolute diehard Luigi's Mansion fan. Well, with that, thank you very much for watching. If there's anything I missed, or if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and if you win a mansion in a contest, don't trust it. It's probably a scam. Bye.